What is up, guys? I'm here today to teach you the Way of the Wolf, Straight Line Selling, and Persuasion Method by Jordan. I'm not sure if he has a middle name, Belfort himself. As everybody knows, he was the character that Leonardo DiCaprio played in Wolf of Wall Street. We're probably a little bit more familiar with the debauchery of his life and some of the stories about crazy drug-induced adventures rather than the actual selling methods that he put to work. But I think even I was a little bit cynical about his selling methods coming to this book. It was bought for me as a gift around Christmas time, so that's the only reason I kind of dove through it. But there's actually a lot of really valuable stuff in there. He does focus a little bit more on the NLP kind of tactical, persuasive methods than maybe most people are comfortable with, but good to know either way. Like, he does actually put up the classic disclaimer, like, do not use this for unethical purposes, which is a little bit ironic, but I think for whatever reason I've had this in my head that I'm going to draw the Stratton Oakmont guy. So as I kind of explain the first bit, let's see what I can do for a lion here. Moral of the story of this book is there's kind of three main. Oh, I should have used a different color. I know the line's got the mane. You guys are gonna like this for sure. It's got an eye here. This looks like a camel with like a, I don't know, they have some type of, oh yeah, Stratton Oakmont. There it is. So now you're gonna be able to join the crew. Anyway, so there's three main things that I pulled out of this book anyway that I think are actually super valuable and can't hurt to learn for sure. So the first thing is he has this whole idea, the whole basis of the straight line selling method is around the idea of certainty. So we're going to cover that. The second thing is he was doing a lot of his meetings as selling face to face, and when he was teaching people the straight line selling method, one of the biggest differences that he came across between his success and people that he was teaching is the way that they presented themselves in a first impression. So first impressions is what we're going to talk about. Hugely important. Everybody knows you got like 4 seconds to be able to get a good first impression. And then he was saying through a Harvard study that it'll take you 7 other interactions to be able to make up for that first impression if you blow it. Not to put stress on you, but that's the case. You got to come in armed and prepared for the first impression. Number 3 is handling objections. This is the one thing that I think in my first selling jobs, I knew I was super certain, and I'm not going to tell you this whole story, but I was certain about everything in step 1. I'll show you. It kind of leads into it, actually, in terms of his certainty. What he's really talking about is 3 main things. So it's product. Let me type this out. Product, you, the salesperson, and your company. So in my case, I went into this company not knowing a thing about selling, about even the industry. Well, I did know a little bit about the industry, but the problem that I blew a bunch of sales on was handling objections. Like, I knew the product in and out. I was there since it was being built right from the ground up, so I knew everything about the product. I was pretty likable because I was a blue collar type guy, and I was selling to a lot of those types of industries, business owners. Get along with those guys. The company was fairly easy to sell on. Like, we had the investment funding. There was a clear upswing in momentum, a lot of customers, big names, et cetera, et cetera. And so it did decently well, but when it came to handling objections, this is the one where if you're the newer salesperson, somebody's just kind of bullshitting you a little bit with their objection. It's not even a real objection, but if you don't know some of these straight line persuasion or selling methods, you'll get lost. I think the instinct is to almost argue. Somebody says, I don't have time. Oh, do you really not have time? And you'll see at the end, there's kind of a unique thing that he approaches in terms of handling objections, and cover that in a second. So back to the story of Wolf of Wall Street and Jordan Belfort's life. So he comes up with this idea. If you guys haven't seen the movie, I'm sure most of you have, but to refresh for everybody else, he comes up with this idea of, or he falls upon selling penny stocks. He's got huge margins, and he's going to start his own company, and he starts selling penny stocks to average people. It's going pretty well, but realizes, you can only make so much. So being the Jordan Belfort, the born salesman that he is, he decides, you know what, I'm gonna actually start selling into whales, people that actually have money to spend, $50,000, $100,000 on these investments, so that I can make significant commissions rather than the few $100 trades that I was selling for these other business owners. So he's able to do it. The natural born salesman that he claims that all of these techniques came to him, but it was clearly through being brought up. I'm not sure his entire background, but I'm sure he was nurtured into it a little bit. Anyway, so he hires all these guys to be salespeople for him, and they're all struggling selling to this upper echelon of America's 1% earners, and he's getting pissed about it. He doesn't know what's going on. He's able to close 30-40% of his leads. His sales floor isn't closing any, zero. They're flatlining. So he's having a weekly sales meeting Tuesdays, and what happens is he's just really had the end of it. He's like, okay, well, everybody needs to tell me exactly what's happening. We're going to handle this right now. And they go through everything they can think of. And he says, you know what? How can this be so hard? Like, every single sale is one straight line, start to finish. And he sits up there and he grabs the pen, draws on a whiteboard. Look, it's literally, we're start to finish here. We got where you're at now. White. Come back to this different pen. All right, so you're either here, and you need to be in control and get people all the way to here. And I mean, it's easier said than done. But what he was really talking about is this idea of certainty. He says that, selling is really just transferring the emotion of certainty. You buy what somebody else is more certain of. Have you ever thought of, think back to the last time you made any decision, really, like whether it be to go for lunch or buy a house or buy a vehicle, either you were certain or somebody else was certain. And I'm almost guarantee you that's the decision you picked. So what he says is, you're somewhere on the scale. You're either a 1 or you're a 10. And almost everybody will come in to a new sales perspective or situation somewhere in here, somewhere in the middle. Even if you have the best brand in the world, they're not going to be 100% certain. Maybe if you're Apple, but somewhere in here, and your goal is really just to come across with so much certainty that you're transferring that emotion to them, and then they are able to get to a level of 10. But there's a little bit, this is what I was talking about, there's a little bit of a unique aspect here, because not only do they need to be genetically certain about what you're presenting them, they need to be certain about you and your company. If you have all three of those things, you're 90% of the way there. You should be able to close that deal if you can handle some objections. So that's literally your goal, is to be able to present your product in a way that removes all levels of doubt, as if you can present yourself in a way that they're going to build rapport with you, and they're going to like you, and they're certain that you're going to be able to deliver the benefits. And lastly, your company. That's why it's called the straight line selling method of persuasion. You got to take them all the way to a 10. And if you've learned nothing else from that book, that's what you should be thinking about, is how certain are they? It's even a decent question to ask people, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your certainty level with, or how much do you believe what I just told you? At least you're fact finding a little bit there, and what he calls gaining intelligence in that qualifying stage. So that's certainty. That's what he's talking about. If you hear that, the next is first impressions. So this guy is an absolute monster when it comes to energy and first impressions. That's why Leo, I think, did such a good job of portraying him in the movie, because he was just so high energy. He was infectious. Like, if you watch Jordan Belfort, the actual guy, on YouTube and his presentations on stage, like even since he's been out of jail and doing these straight line persuasion seminars, he gets up there with so much certainty. Even if you're somebody in the audience who doesn't think that they're a salesperson, that has no interest in this guy and hates everything he represents, by 3 minutes into it, you have to be paying attention to at least the words coming out of his mouth. You have to entertain the ideas that he's presenting, because he's so certain, he has so much enthusiasm about it, that you're forced to. It's just human nature. If somebody comes at you with a higher level of certainty, you will listen to them. So that's where he's coming at you with this idea of first impressions. So again, first impressions, he taught his guy these were the biggest things that were holding them back from closing the sales that he was already making, is they weren't able to portray not only his level of confidence, but develop a first impression to where you were able to get on the right foot. You were able to lead people down this straight line selling method through the persuasion method 1 to 10. So what are those things? How do you actually go about it? First of all, some of these things are a little bit vague, but he says you gotta come in as sharp as a tack. As sharp as a tack. So if you're coming in low energy, and I guess this is a little bit arbitrary definition, but you can get the idea. Like, you need to be as on it as possible. And crazy enough, he actually goes into some pretty hardcore NLP. It's like neuro-linguistic programming in terms of getting him to the physiological state of being that guy, being on. And he does it through things that, like, certain sense, his body movements. He'll do all these things before he gets on stage. I would encourage you to read it. It's a little bit hardcore, but it's working clearly. So you need to come across as sharp as a tack. The other thing is, you got to be enthusiastic as hell. Enthusiastic. Literally, one of the things he puts in the book is, again, you're just transferring your level of certainty. It's an emotional thing that you're selling people. He even agrees with some of the Robert Cialdini stuff, where you are selling on emotion, and people will convince themselves of their decision based on logic. Third thing here is you got to be an expert in your field. So depending on who you're talking to, nobody wants to waste their time. Everybody thinks that their time is valuable, no matter who they are, whether their time is legitimately valuable or not. The only reason why somebody's going to entertain what you have to say is if you immediately come off as an expert. If you're sharp as a tack, you're enthusiastic as hell, and you have ideas, you have insights about the industry that they don't have, then you will be heard and you'll get the opportunity to present and hopefully convert people's level of certainty to the 10 that you need it to be at. So if you do all that, the only thing that could stop you from actually closing these deals is some last minute smokescreen objections. The reason I say smokescreen is because, as humans, we're just trained, we're conditioned to be able to not say no. It's a little bit pathetic when you think about it, but literally, you don't want to say no. Think about the last time somebody knocked on your door and you maybe said no the first time they pressed on a little bit. Did you say no again, or did you come up with some excuse that wasn't actually true? I'd bet that you said something like, you know what, it's dinner time, or I need my partner to be home to be able to make decisions like this, or whatever it might be. You're going to hear those objections no matter what you're selling. And he says 99% of the time, they are just smokescreens. And if you can figure out a way to handle them efficiently and have scripts built out for them, you will have so much more success, because that's just it. People, they're not certain. That's literally it all comes down to. So how do you handle objections? It's a pretty simple idea. He just defines it as looping. And this was a little bit vague in the book, even some of the stuff I've seen online. He doesn't go into too much detail about it. I encourage you to look into this a little bit more, because it's obviously hugely important. But what he means by looping is that instead of trying to argue the objection that you've been presented, you just need to go back to these 3 things that they need to be absolutely certain about and start from the top and try and understand where their level of certainty is. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you were selling that, door-to-door, let's say alarm systems, and somebody says, you know what, this is just not a good time. My kids just got home, whatever it might be. His idea of looping just states that you agree with him, and you say, I'm with you. This is never a good time. Nobody wants people knocking on their door. Let me just ask you one quick question before you leave. Do you guys, and then you ask a probing question to find out their level of certainty on the product. Do you believe in home systems? Do you believe in alarm systems at all? the example that he uses in the book is obviously selling stocks. So he would ask a question in relation to their level of certainty on the idea of the stock pick or the stock or the company that he brought them. So, before I waste any of your time here, let me just ask you one more question. Do you even believe in Apple right now? Do you think that's a good idea? Or whatever idea you just brought them. Hopefully it's a little bit more insightful than one of the biggest companies in the world. And if they say, you know what, yeah, I think it's a great idea. And then you just move down the list and you say, oh, I'm glad you think so. Well, let me ask you another question. If you think it's such a great idea, why are we not moving forward? Is it something, that I said? Did I, and maybe you don't want to be as blunt as that, but really you're just trying to figure out what their level of certainty is on yourself. So you keep asking opening questions and you loop back. Are they 10? Are they 10? Are they 10? If so, then you ask for the sale. And if for whatever reason they throw you smoke screens, then you keep looping back. The other interesting thing that he does say is, most people think that he comes off as such a pushy salesperson, or the typical pushy salesperson, that he's going for the throat for everybody no matter what. But he does clearly state that your biggest waste of time is trying to sell to people that say no. No, he clearly states nobody's going to get rich from trying to turn no's into yeses. The thing that has made him rich time and time again, even after he's gotten out of jail, is that he can change a maybe or not right now into a yes almost every time. And that's basically as simple as it is. So hopefully you guys were able to get something out of the Way of the Wolf here. If you're into the hardcore tactics, NLP stuff, I'd encourage you to pick up the book. It's got some cool ideas in there in terms of, like I said, just anchoring your emotions to specific things so that you can always be on and ready for whatever your kind of physiological state needs to be closing these deals. So put these to work. Let me know how it works out for you. If you have any further ideas or things you pull out of the book, would love to hear them. Shoot me an email or leave them in the comments. Thanks so much.